Item 10C, adopt a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a contract with Moffitt and Nickel to provide technical assistance for the FEMA San Francisco Bay Coastal Study in the amount of $25,160 and appropriating funds in this amount from the general fund.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council. Jimmy Tan, City Engineer. The topic in front of you today is in regards to the FEMA Coastal Flood Hazard Study. FEMA conducted the study as part of their risk mapping assessment planning program to determine the revised base flood elevations and extent of the flood hazard areas for coastal communities throughout the nation. And the hazard study for various counties throughout California was conducted by FEMA, as shown in the slide. And its SF Bay Area study includes 9 counties, such as Marin, Sonoma, Santa Clara, Alameda, as well as San Mateo. Majority of San Mateo County agencies were outreached by FEMA and were aware of the study as early as July 2014. They were also invited to attend a workshop back in October of last year as well. Unfortunately, our city wasn't aware of the study and was informed by FEMA back in November, which was a little bit late in the process, when FEMA requested the city to comment on the draft maps. One of the possibilities is that San Bruno doesn't have any coastal frontage and floodplain areas in the previous mapping. Staff has been coordinating and communicating with FEMA since we received the draft maps. The overall impact to the San Bruno residents is substantial since properties located in the floodplain area will be required to purchase flood insurance if they have federally backed mortgage or loans. In order to provide detailed comments to FEMA, we came to council back in January of this year to award a contract to Moffitt and Nickel to provide technical assistance. The work included coordinating with FEMA, reviewing the technical documentation, flooding mapping methodology, and conducting preliminary analysis to determine the flood sources, and providing comments of these draft maps to FEMA. And that portion of the work was completed in February 14th to meet the 16th deadline. The city also held a meeting with representatives from FEMA back in March of 27th, along with representatives from city of our city, County of San Mateo, Congresswoman Jackie Spears' office, and the consultants. So the meeting discussed the overall timeline associated with the map development process and the source of flooding and the clarifications of responses from the comments that we provided to FEMA, and any procedures required to submit additional information for further review. This slide shows the extent of the flooding areas within San Bruno. As you can see here, this is the areas of interest within San Bruno that are indicated as being flooded. There are 3 potential identified potential sources that the consultant has determined that impacted this area. The first is the navigable slough, the second is the tide gate structure, and the third is the airport levees. As for the navigable slough, it's located within the South San Francisco area. It is like the arm to the Coma Creek channel there. The south bank of the slough is lower than the elevation of what FEMA had determined as their base flood elevation. So the water eventually overtops that south bank and flows down from South San Francisco towards Shaw Road into San Bruno. The other is the tide gate structure. The tide gate structure is at the end of the San Bruno Creek near the SFO Airport and United Airlines building there. And it prevents water from coming back in from the bay. But since the tide gate structure is non-accredited, according to FEMA, that's not taken into account as part of the analysis. So the water does flow through that area into the San Bruno Creek and floods San Bruno. The third source is the flooding from the airport levees that's around the perimeter of the San Francisco airport. The airport levees are non-accredited, And again, according to FEMA's methodology, these non-credited structures are not taken into account in their analysis, and it's used as it just overtops these areas. The staff spoke to the airport. There's substantial improvements that needs to be done on these levees, and it's currently in their 10-year CIP for these improvements. These sources of flooding can be mitigated through a process to revise these flood maps, but it requires a detailed study to be provided to FEMA, and staff is currently interested in developing additional hydraulic analysis that provide more detailed information. FEMA's current hydraulic model to analyze this coastal flooding is based on what we call it a steady state model, which assumes like an infinite amount of water that's coming in, and then within an infinite duration. FEMA considered, a static elevation of 10.4 feet in our area in their analysis, and anything that's below 10.4 feet is flooded. So the new analysis, the two-dimensional model, will provide a better understanding of this coastal flooding in this region, and whether any of the flooding can be reduced within this neighborhood. The new model will take into account the duration of the tide, the time of the tide, and the volume of the water that's coming in, and possible any storage in these low-lying areas. The results from the technical analysis will be provided from the city. Will provide the city with a better understanding to make an effective appeal to FEMA to support a map amendment if the analysis shows the area of inundation is reduced. Upon completion of the analysis, staff will also discuss the results and appeal to FEMA to change the maps. The remaining schedule, FEMA completed all the tasks up to June 2015, when the preliminary flood insurance rate maps will be released. Once that gets released, FEMA would then hold a public outreach with communities to explain the changes to these maps and answer any questions. The 90-day appeal period, if we do consider appealing, it's between October to January. Then FEMA will issue a letter of map determination, and then the compliance period begins, where agencies must adopt a floodplain management regulations and adopt new ordinances for building codes. The new rate maps will be effective starting around September 2016. Then the flood insurance will be required for the residents starting at that time. So to proceed with the detailed analysis, staff is recommending to adopt the resolution for this contract to Moffitt & Nichol to provide the technical assistance.
Any questions for staff? Again?
How many properties are we talking about?
Estimated to be about 460 properties.
And these are primarily residential properties in the location that's colored on the map.
Anyone else? Irene?
Thank you. One of the things that we learned at the FEMA conducted meeting was about the flood insurance, and if people in that area are concerned, they should talk to their house insurance people before. And I'm sorry, I can't. Jimmy, do you remember if you get flood insurance before it's required, it's usually much less, and then it only increases if at a certain percentage up to a top level. But if you get it and turns out you don't need it, you can cancel it. So I think we need to do some kind of information about that. It's a crucial part for people who have federally backed mortgages in that area. It's generally our low-income area. There's a lot of renters there. I'm really concerned about the people. And if the homeowners have to pay more for this flood insurance, the renters are going to be suffering as well. So I'm not sure what the best way to do that is, but it's something we need to do.
If If I could respond briefly to that. So the outreach, if you could go to the next slide, Jimmy. FEMA intends to begin public outreach shortly after the maps are released the preliminary maps are released in June. So the period between July and July, August, September is a very important public outreach opportunity, which will allow for the provision that you've mentioned based on our understanding of the FEMA requirements. There is a little bit of does present a little bit of a conundrum, because we are then potentially, depending on the information we would get from the additional technical analysis, wanting to consider the submittal of an appeal. And then those periods are going to overlap. So we will not know whether we have the basis for an appeal and whether that appeal will be successful. We will not know that before homeowners, renters need to become aware of the potential for the flood insurance requirement. And as you said, the earlier you get it, our very limited understanding about the insurance-related aspects of this issue is exactly as you said, that if homeowners apply and obtain the insurance early, there may be an opportunity for a discount. However, they would be in the odd position of having to do that before we know whether there's a potential for the map to be revised.
Yes, so that's the conundrum.
Right.
And I'm not really excited about how accurate or how diligent FEMA is about notifying people, since they were negligent in notifying us about all these meetings for over a year. So I'm sure we can work out something that we let people know without scaring them to death, but I think the more people, the sooner people know, the better, is my opinion. So
Absolutely.
I think we can work something out.
What concerns me is that no one wants to be in a floodplain. No one wants to be in that zone. My experience as a design professional is that parts of east sides of San Mateo and Palo Alto have big concerns. There's been big hearings and a lot of concern from the residents, and even community development departments have had to change their guidelines. And it's a blemish on those properties, and it's paying for flood insurance is one thing, but if the property value goes down because of that, I think we need to advocate for those residents. And being 400 plus residents, we should really make sure that FEMA is doing their best to do the technical aspect of it. It concerns me during the staff report, when you say that a lot of these measures are uncertified, so they're not giving it possibly the full benefit of stopping a flood or containing a flood. What does that mean? So then when they decertify measures at the airport, does it make it freely that it goes into San Bruno, because they're not giving it the benefit that that's due. So I think if we live there, and I know Councilman O'Connell has family in that area and stuff, and that's the area, the Bel Air district, and we need to advocate for that community to make sure that they don't get the short end of having to deal with flood insurance and in those aspects. Thank you.
Anyone else? Action by the council?
I'd like to introduce the resolution.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Aye.
Councilmember Ibarra.
Aye.
Councilmember Medina.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Salazar.
Aye.
Mayor Ruane.
Aye.